was gonna. I think we're all set.
All right. We're a little late for the start of our 5:30 workshop, but we do now have a quorum, so we'll begin. My name's Dan McGuire. I'm Chair of the Town Council. Workshops are less formal than our business meetings. We don't usually do roll or have any of the other sort of startup activities that we have with the regular meetings. So tonight, our workshop is basically a discussion of the council rules and town council committees. So we can begin. I guess first up is town council rules. Usually every year we redo our rules. This year, a meeting I had with Michael earlier in the summer, he pointed out some discrepancies between our rules and the town charter. Obviously, there shouldn't be any of those, so we need to address those. Did anybody have anything in particular they wanted to start with as far as the rules are concerned? My suggestion would be is we just sort of go down through them, unless someone would like to propose something different.
Yeah, we could just kind of make our way through it and
Yep.
people can call out.
I
if they
agree.
have something, yeah.
Okay, very good. So on packet page 4 is where the meat of it starts with our operational rules. I don't think that there's anything there that we need to change in section A. Our meetings are still here, still at 7. The first and third Tuesday of the month, with the exception of July, August, and November. Hello, Matthew. We just this instant began, so.
Great, sorry I'm late.
No,
Almost-
it's quite all
almost
right.
nothing.
Does anyone have anything? We're just started with the rules and we're just going down through them.
That first packet.
We've made a change to the public comment. That's on, I'm sorry, I'm on the next page.
Yep, we'll get there.
Yeah, sorry.
No, that's quite all right. So I don't think there's anything there in section 02, workshops and special meetings. I don't think there's anything that needs to change in A. I don't think there's anything that needs to change in B. When I click on that link that we've got buried in there, no, I'm not hooked into.
Can I just ask for a point of clarification?
Sure, absolutely.
Are
Stop
we
us
going,
anytime.
if there is a difference from what it is today versus what's new, are we gonna highlight that so we know what we're talking about, or?
Yes, we will make changes
Okay.
as we go right down
Okay,
through.
all right, good.
Yep. Yep. And the link seems to work, so I think we're all set there. Section 03, our regular agendas. I don't think we've had any discussions, or I heard any requests to change the number of days. Michael and Britt have sort of got us back on track as far as orders and resolves and tracking that information. So I think we need to sort of, a lot of the start of this session is getting sort of back in touch with our roots at some level. So I don't think we have anything to change there. I think we're going to be complying more completely with our own rules. We have in here the 3 minutes for public comment. So I think that covers us as far as our policy is concerned, that we have to have it written somewhere, that's the limitation that we're starting with. We've had that for years, so I don't think that's anything new to people. We have in our agenda still, every agenda we have public comment. And we've rearranged the agenda. I think I'm still getting used to it. I don't know about the rest of you folks, but it still feels a little awkward to me because I'm just not used to it. But the order has been changed in large part
Right.
to allow for public comment and also to give anybody who might be here more information about what we're going to be talking about before public comment. So if there's something they want to say about that, they have an opportunity to do that. So I think those suggestions from Michael and Brett are an improvement to our agenda.
And they were to align with Robert's Rules of Order.
And Robert's rules, yeah.
One point of clarification I want to make is that it's actually come to me 3 times, and again yesterday, when I was up picking up the packet yesterday, there was an individual here to meet with KRT, and she had mentioned that she wishes she could come up to a town council meeting and speak, but she wasn't allowed to because this is not where she votes. And I said to her, because I spoke to you, Michael, about that once in the past, that they are allowed to, anybody that is a taxpayer. Is it anybody can come and speak? And maybe can we put that in here? Because that's one thing when I read this, I did not see, because that's one thing that I know it's happened 3 times since I've been here in a couple months. People don't think unless they're a voting member in the town, they're allowed to speak. So I wish we could put in there that public comment is open to anybody, but it's restricted to 3 minutes, or something to that effect in here.
I don't think there's any problem doing that. If, typically, the way you read these things, if it doesn't say you can't do it, then it's allowed at some level. We've never, to my knowledge, not let someone speak who had some business with the town, even if they weren't a resident, or even if they weren't a voter. I think sometimes people self-censor, when they don't see permission in the rules. So I have no objection to, comments are limited by 3 minutes. It does say everyone who wishes to speak will have an opportunity to speak once, so, but evidently people aren't including themselves when they read the everyone. Do you have any particular language you'd like to suggest?
No, and my question is this what it said before, or is this what
This is existing.
This is existing, okay. And maybe it's just that, as Mike had clarified with me, and I clarified with the individual yesterday, they are allowed to speak.
Yeah.
I didn't know 3 minutes was the rule, but I recommend, 3 minutes is a long time to speak. So, I mean, they should give people more than enough time.
Yeah,
Could we say any member of the public?
Yeah, just say.
yeah, we can
that's
do
a good idea. Yeah.
any member, yeah.
Any human?
Yeah, it's anyone who has business with the town. I would be hesitant
Well, if
to,
they're here, then they got business with the town.
not necessarily.
I think so.
But yeah, anyone in attendance or anyone,
So you would change everyone to say anyone in attendance who wishes to speak will have the opportunity to speak once?
in
So
attendance.
change everyone to anyone?
Anyone in attendance or online
Yeah.
perhaps.
So anyone in attendance, in person or remotely,
Yeah.
who
anyone-
wishes to speak will have the opportunity to speak once.
Yep, I think so.
I think that works.
You got that, Britt? She's
Oh, are you
recording this.
taking those notes?
She's preparing these
Pressurized.
documents for me.
Oh, okay.
Just I guess to mention, because you guys typically approve these at the beginning of every council session, we'll put this on the agenda for the next meeting to be approved
Yeah,
by the council collectively. Not the next meeting tonight,
yes. Yep,
the next meeting.
in September.
Yes.
If we get through them, hopefully we will. All right, moving on to workshop agendas. Workshop agendas, the only real thing there that sometimes people trip on is the 2 counselors. The reason we added that is because obviously you need 3 counselors to make anything move forward. If you can't find 2 counselors who are interested in discussing a topic, we decided that it was one way to do some editing up front. Interestingly enough, you can't do that to a regular meeting. A counselor can bring up anything, a single counselor can bring anything up to a regular meeting, but the rules for workshop are a little different.
Okay.
Meeting packets and documentation. This is a different one because we've kind of had trouble getting compliance with getting everybody on board with our methodology here, and I'd like for us to come to some agreement on how we want to do edits and comments. I think this system frankly works really well. One of the things I like about this system is it doesn't depend on color. Color's really great, but once you start photocopying things or anything along those lines, it disappears. If information is struck through, it's being deleted. If it's underlined, it's being added. I don't think there's anything in our tool belt of modern technology that makes it any clearer than that.
And I think that's what like Microsoft Word track changes does too, to your point.
I think the other piece of, that we have trouble with is that it's not always clear to us who's created a document. So if you have questions, sometimes it's not clear who to go to, especially, obviously some of our policies and some of that stuff. So I guess I would vote to maintain this and try and get us all to get on board. How do others feel?
I'm fine with that.
I'm fine.
Yeah, I think it's a reasonable goal.
Has there been recent things that didn't comply with this?
Most stuff doesn't comply with this, truth be known. If you go back and look through our packets, you'll see a lot of, like Microsoft Word documents with comments, but you won't see the struck through.
Okay.
And I think the other piece that I'm not sure is in here is that some documents we go through multiple revisions. So if we have this document and we make a revision, the next time we see this document, we would see it with underlines or crossing out. But if we make changes to that document, the document that goes forward is the one we agreed upon at that meeting. So you lose that first round of changes because they become part of the working document that everybody's agreed to move forward, if that makes sense. And I think that helps lessen some of the confusion myself. Again, if you or staff or somebody else has some other suggestions you want to make, even in the future, we can talk about those. But it sounds like there's generally.
So
agreement
what,
to-
is it specifically the section G that you're saying that people aren't complying with?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
So I just want to make, for a point of clarification, make sure I understand what you're saying. So, meeting one, we make some suggestions, we go through it, we edit it. Then in meeting two, we accept those changes. You want
You would see them in red or green.
to see them red and green, but then meeting three, those would all be gone, and, because they're new, and then we would be making new suggestions or whatever, so we would know those are the new ones, because those ones. Okay, I'm on, yes, I agree with that.
And because the documents are dated, if we have to go back, it's not hard for us to go
You
back
could
and-
do that, yeah, I like it that way, it's a much
Trace,
cleaner way,
sorry.
because I hate when I'm negotiating contracts and where are we, where did this start, and how did we get to where we're at, so no, I agree with that's the cleanest way to do it.
That-
Yeah, I think it can be really messy to navigate versions that have lots of different changes from lots of different
Yes.
people in them. So, and some of the, what has happened a few times in the past when we've kind of gotten to that place is that the packet includes a clean version that incorporates all of the changes and then I guess at least all the agreed to changes.
When
and-
we're ready to vote.
Yeah.
We see a
Yes,
final,
that's right.
complete, clean
Yeah.
version of the document, yeah, when we're ready to act on it. I think number 2 in this one is also kind of an issue. Now that we're using more electronic documents and we're using PDFs, if I've spent multiple hours going through my packet and I make edits and comments and stuff, and then a revision to the packet comes out just before the meeting, and it changes the page numbering or anything,
Yeah.
it's really difficult because there's no way for me to transfer all my comments and edits from the old version to the new version. And so I think once the document's released to us, I think we should just live with it. Once the packet's released, I would encourage us to just live with it. And if there's changes we need to make, we can make them at the meeting. Does that make sense?
Sure, so is the 48 hours something you want to go by? Because we've been trying to get the whole packet out the the 7 days that you've asked for. And so a lot of times we find ourselves scrambling to get everything put together and to get it out. And that's when we find that we make errors, and they're honest mistakes, and, we try to correct them. So.
Yeah, there's no criticism. I
Yeah.
think it's trying to find that sweet spot. I mean.
So if we can put the agenda out and then put the packet out a couple of days later, if everyone's okay with that, then that might help us to ensure we have more time to review.
I mean, I can't speak for the rest of the group. If I get the packet 5 days in front of the meeting, that would be enough time for me.
I mean, honestly, I
Frankly, I
don't,
often do it a couple of days beforehand is when I start to dig into it.
right, exactly. I was gonna say, I often do it the day of, just so everything's fresh in my mind, yeah.
Yeah, 48 hours is enough
Yeah,
for me.
yeah.
So if we don't get the packet until 48 hours before the meeting, would that be helpful?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so. I think the Wednesday's the hard part because of it being midweek and all the things that cramp up. So, maybe we could probably get it out Thursday or Friday.
I think that would be-
our goal would be to have it out on Thursday.
Yeah.
That just gives us one more day to make sure everything's in order.
I think that's fine. I mean, it doesn't sound like anyone objects to that.
So then
No,
on
no problem.
Wednesday, the clerk will share the agendas.
Yeah,
Because that's the required 7 days advance notice. And then on Thursday or Friday, they'll share the packet.
yeah. And I suppose doing it that way, if someone has a question about the agenda or whatever, it gives them a small window to say, well, what are we gonna do X or are we gonna do Y? Before-
Perfect.
All right,
I think that's a fair operational change.
good, okay.
Dan, can we go back? I apologize on,
Nope,
on B, the two counselors' request. Can you give me an example? Because I'm a little, I just want to understand what I'm agreeing to here. Like, say, for example, Ann has something that she wants to add to the workshop agenda. Does Ann now have to go to one of the rest of us and get us to agree to that request? How is that going to actually work?
It can work that way. Often it just works in conversation. One of us will bring something up and then the
At a
chair.
council meeting, yeah.
Yeah, and then the chair will just say, is there anybody else on board with that? And often there's more than one other person who's interested.
Okay.
If Dan proposes to dig a moat around the town hall, I probably wouldn't get any other supporters for that, and so it would never come to a workshop for us to discuss.
I don't know. I've been watching The Walking Dead, and it
Which-
might be a good
So
idea.
you never know, conditions can change,
So it saved me embarrassing myself because I couldn't find another council.
Understood, yep.
To go for that. All right. Quorum. I haven't checked the Article 2, Section 13 for the charter, but I'm pretty confident that that's accurate still. The 3 votes for passage and at least 24 hours notice time. I think none of that has to change. The enactments piece is pretty much, the question there is, do we just say, because that's all laid out in the charter, how the council is supposed to do this. So do we refer to the charter at this point and just yank this language out? The downside of that is it means you have to go somewhere else to find out what it means. The upside of that is it gets people thinking more about the charter, which isn't a bad thing, as being the real source of our authority.
So you're saying the enactment form is referenced in the
I
charter?
believe so, yeah.
I'm not sure. I don't recall.
but, I mean, is there anything that we're aware of in A, that's what you're referring to,
Yeah.
that isn't compliant with the charter?
No,
And, yeah,
I was kind of looking more just for philosophical, how people feel. I mean, it's much more convenient to see it here.
yeah, I think it,
Okay.
I
Just leave it as
I
it
hate,
is.
like, I deal with the Federal Register all the time, you know?
You don't want to be sent to 14 other places to look
Yeah,
for information.
I think that's right.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's fine to list it in there. I don't see it in the charter. so.
The ordinance is still the same, the order and resolve information, that doesn't change. Section 08 on packet page 7, top of 7, is again, more from the town charter. don't believe there's anything there that's not up to date. 09, the recording of votes. We do that, and this was a question I had, we do that, but we do it as a group. We never declare individually, or we never record individually in our minutes who voted which by. And I got, when I was rereading this, I wasn't sure if we're supposed to do that, or if that's something we have a choice about. Do you know, Michael?
The recording of the votes,
Yeah,
typically, they've always been recorded, so usually it would say all in favor and one opposed, Counselor X
okay.
is the opposed.
Okay.
So that
Just
way,
do it that
so
way.
it doesn't say who voted yes or no, it just says all in favor, or 3 in favor, 2 opposed, Counselors X and Y.
We're opposed.
Yeah.
Okay. And it is important to know who voted no, because it's only the folks who voted no that are in a position to actually bring an item back to the council for reconsideration.
Would it hurt, though, to record, so for an example, can someone abstain? Is that recorded?
Yep.
Yes.
You know, would it hurt to just list out the 3 yeas and the 3 nays? Is it gonna hurt at all to do that? And is there, I mean,
I've seen it done both ways, that's why I don't have any strong feelings one way or another.
It's typically recording of the proceedings of the meeting.
Yeah,
I would propose to actually write in who the yeas and who the nays were. Just, if there's ever a question, it's documented. These are who said yes, these are who said no. There's no
Who's
question.
abstained.
Yeah, and who abstained.
Is that a heavy lift, do you think, for us to start doing that?
I don't, to change this, to change the rules here?
Yeah, well,
Oh, just to change how we record it.
Change how we record.
Yeah, I think we can, that's not a heavy lift, I think we can
Yeah.
record that just
Okay.
fine.
Because you can just say, you know, yays, McGuire, Gas, whoever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nays, or abstain. Okay, good. All right, we'll make that change then.
Yeah, I think that's what we do now, looking at the minutes for the other meetings, yeah.
Meetings.
That's what I thought, yeah, so, let's-
Yeah.
I don't think we've had any with any no's recently, and that's why. It hasn't-
I voted against in the first go-around, I voted against the,
Not any,
um,
no nays in the
ADU.
most recent minutes, I'm just looking at the ones,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep,
If you look
that's
at
it.
the 7/16 minutes.
There's the nay in there.
it would have been the Junes, yeah.
When,
It was your first meeting, right?
Yeah, it was June, yep.
In the 7/16 agenda packet, there was one that
Excuse me.
recorded the yays and the nays.
okay. There you go. Section 10, when ordinances take effect, I don't think there's any changes there, nor section 11, when orders and resolves take effect. Counselor duties, section 12. I didn't have any suggested changes for any of these sections.
Another,
Section A is on the chair as the presiding officer. Section B is the chair shall preserve decorum and order. This was we used to have a separate order and quorum policy, which we kind of merged in with our rules a couple of years ago. Just so we wouldn't have different documents to look for. No one's ever been ejected from one of our meetings that I know of.
You guys just aren't doing it
I
right.
say, you guys have only had me a couple months.
The declaration of votes, I don't think that changes. We do I use, and I can give you copies of, this is the extent of Robert's rules. And in all my experience on the school board and the town council, this has answered like 99.5% of all the questions, so. I don't think we have to make it more complicated than that.
the E, all town councilors
Yeah.
under 12. Counselor duties.
E is, the charter has us doing this role, and we haven't done it. We've Justine's been prioritizing her work, most important things first. And this is on the list of things to do to get us back into that loop.
We're finalizing an electronic method.
Yeah, I saw that in Justine's report.
Yeah, and so we'll be able to, we can work with the finance committee to establish like the rotating schedule, and then we can go through with counselors what to do.
We also expanded it to include the finance committee members too, to sort of stretch it out and to give them more of a role. I think, though, that we can do that within the confines of the charge to the finance committee. I don't think we need to add it to our rules here. Unless anyone thinks otherwise.
Right.
No,
And to your
that's fine.
earlier point, it doesn't say they can't in this
Yes, it
document.
doesn't say
no.
they can't. That's right.
And in the future, I guess we didn't really comply with this, but we can work on making a list following the June election. We can work on making a schedule.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, it would be one of our startup duties once we
Yeah.
get our, everything back in order.
And we're, with the new segregation of duties with payroll and accounts payable, we'll be doing essentially one every other week.
Right.
So there'll be a payroll and an accounts payable, so then they'll basically 52, we'll have 52 weeks a year, there'll be something for somebody to
To-
review
to
and
review.
sign.
Good, okay.
And I know that's not the time to talk about that, but when would we talk about that? Because I do have some suggestions and some thoughts on that, especially with segregation of duties, who's going to be looking at it? Because obviously the past issues that we've had, we don't want those to happen again in the future. When would we be talking about that?
So this process explains that a counselor would be signing those on a rotating schedule.
Okay,
But the duties, you're talking about the duties itself.
The duties itself,
Michael and
yeah.
Justine and the staff have been working, as Michael just mentioned, with separating AP and accounts payable.
Mm-hmm.
And I think at some point in time, once that gets solidified, we'll get a presentation of what that process is, and you'll have a chance to comment then.
okay, all right.
Does that work?
Yeah, no, I just was wondering when, because I know obviously it's an issue or has been an issue, and it's one of the things I'd like to see addressed.
Yeah, it's been, actually, it's been in the process of being addressed now for quite a number of months, and a lot of progress has been made. One thing that I do like is in our tonight's packet where we have the department head reports. It's a really good way to to sort of take the temperature of what people are working on.
And to your earlier point, Mr. Chair, that we've been working to prioritize the most critical financial functions, given the limited finance staff that we have. I shared with you that we have somebody who was doing accounts payable for us temporarily, who's going to be joining us permanently. And then as part of the budget, we'll be having another finance position that will be added later in the fiscal year for accounting. And so we'll have a robust, finance department, so we can more focus on some of these big picture items, and we'll work to get these all in order.
Thank you. Section 13, rules of debate. This is again more of the sort of order and decorum policy being blended into our rules. The preamble of it is pretty straightforward, I think. I don't really feel like we have to say more than that. If anyone has anything they'd like to add, though, or change, let me know. If I go too fast, slow me down. I'm going to move on to making a motion. This process is pretty much the basic Robert Rules process.
Yeah.
There are many of Robert's rules that we use. I can send you copies of these if you'd like, Mike.
I would prefer those, yeah, if
Yeah.
you could send that.
And then I think the last line of that is that we can, once we agree to these rules at sort of the beginning of our session each year, it takes a 4/5 vote of the council to open them up again and make changes.
Yeah.
When questions are under Debate is pretty straightforward, pretty basic, Robert's rules. One thing I would like to do, well, no, we'll save that for later. And then the caveat, we'd like all our committees to kind of adopt essentially the same process, but we haven't dictated that to them. Voting is pretty straightforward. I don't think there's any changes there. Same with parliamentary procedure. Section 14, breach of the council rules. It's pretty self-explanatory. Section 15, standing and special committees. Again, this comes from the charter, gives us the authority to create committees.
Actually, can I just back you up for a
Yep,
second?
absolutely.
Under section 6.14, the breach of council rules.
Yeah.
I just sort of, looking at under A there, on a motion passed by the rest of the council, if a member is guilty of a breach or any of the rules or orders of the council, it says they be required to make satisfaction therefore, and I'm just sort of, what that means is a little opaque to me.
It's the sort of legalese stuff,
That's what
or
I
the Robert
figured,
Rules
yeah.
sort of lingo.
Yeah.
It basically just means that whatever the council, if the council says that a member has breached the rules, then they would have to define what they need to do in order to get back in good standing, for lack
Yeah,
of a better way
okay.
of saying it.
All right, that works.
Basically.
Jump in and if I misspeak, please.
Yeah, I mean, basically, it might be that the council says you have to apologize for breaking the rules, and you can't. And that would be the satisfaction for you to apologize.
yeah.
And you couldn't do that until you couldn't vote or speak
Yeah.
until you did that. I mean, that's an example.
Yeah, that makes sense.
This is, go ahead.
I was gonna just say, I think if we get to a point where someone has done that, we'll consult with legal counsel and
Yeah.
guidance on how best to navigate that.
Standing and special committees. Any questions there? We have had both, the difference is, for instance, the finance committee, schoolhouse committee, open space committees are standing committees. The ladder truck committee that we had when we purchased our most recent ladder truck was an ad hoc committee that was formed just for the duration of that effort. And we can create either one. All right, to move on to 16.
Okay, with me?
Okay, yep. Social media platforms, we added this 4 or 5 years ago, I think.
Yep.
Obviously, counselors are allowed to have social media platforms of their own. If they have one representing themselves as a counselor, then there are some specific rules that go along with that. And these are all outlined here.
One of my questions on this, and I can't remember which section it was, 3 or 4, was when it comes to town, there's a difference between school budget and town budgets.
Correct.
All right, and this doesn't specifically say that, and I was a little concerned with that. Because, and what my concern is that, you know, I try not to make any comments in regards, or very little comments in regards to town politics, but unfortunately, town politics do include, you know, the school budgets. And we've all got various opinions about those, and it doesn't, you know, I do comment on school, matters, but not typically with the town. I recommend, you know, that they come talk to the town. And I was just concerned that we don't specify the difference, or is there not a difference? That was my question.
If you have a social media account that's just Michael Johnson,
Yep.
that's not associated with the town.
Mhm.
But if you create a social media account that says Michael Johnson, Town Councilor Gray, Maine, now you've hitched your wagon to this star, and these rules would apply to that particular site.
And that's what we're specifically talking about, is if I represented myself on behalf of.
As a town council.
As a town council, okay, all
On
right,
social media, correct.
okay.
Yep.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
if I may add, I think if town councilors conduct town business in, with their own personal accounts,
Yeah.
it's subject to the freedom of access laws.
Still even so.
Still even so.
Okay.
And so, if there were a municipal attorney here from our firm, they would advise councilors to just not engage on social media regarding town business. Because it's otherwise it's subject to freedom of access laws. And so somebody could essentially submit a request for all your communication regarding town business from social media, and you have to provide that.
When we created this policy, one of the reasons we did this, and we worked with the town attorneys then, but things do change over time, so, was in fact that if I have a Dan McGuire social media account, but I have a Dan McGuire Town Councilor Gray Maine account, and I keep all of that town business in that account, then when someone makes a freedom of access demand, I can legitimately say, I've done all town business on this particular account. That's what I'll give you. I'm not giving you anything on my personal account. I think one of the reasons why people who wanted to have social media accounts, not me, we created this was to make that division. I assume that's still,
Yeah, I think that's what this is saying. This
Okay.
is saying if you want to, that, it's saying to ensure compliance. Because if
Right.
you look back, it says if councils choose to use social media platforms for communication, it should be noted the Maine Freedom of Access Act requirements would apply to content involving the conduct of government business on those platforms. And so basically, as part of these rules, that you guys decided that if you want to conduct town business on social media, you have to do it with a town council specific account.
Yeah.
And so a good real life example is Ann, Councilor Gass, has account, and she's been seen on social media responding to questions and concerns regarding residents on various subjects.
Yeah.
And it says, I forget what your page is, Councilor Ann
And
Gass.
Town council. I
Yeah,
think,
town
yeah.
council or something to that effect, so it's clear. And so, on her personal, she doesn't respond to any of those things using her personal account.
Yeah.
So if a counselor wants to be able to use social media to talk about town business,
they need to create.
they need to create a council. And
Yeah.
that's what this is telling, this is, you guys are all, by adopting these rules, you're agreeing to do that,
Right.
to ensure compliance. And that's what legal counsel would recommend, and that's why they recommended this a number of years ago.
May I?
Sure.
ask a question, clarifying question? What Mike was asking, I think, is does school, you know, the SAD, comments on the operation of the SAD, I would think that's different than town operations,
Yes.
and wouldn't,
I mean, it kind of depends. It hasn't seemed, I mean, it's quite possible I've applied this incorrectly from time to time, but generally, I mean, if I could, as a counselor, comment on the portion of the town overall budget that, is made up of the school budget.
As a counselor.
Or something like, as a counselor, but I would be highly unlikely to comment on, the content or something of the school budget as a town councilor. I might do that as Ann Gass, as a private citizen.
Yeah, okay, and that's how I feel as well, okay, all right.
I think it's just one more sort of caveat. It's important that whether you're on social media or your own account, or even in email or phone conversations, that you remind people that you're speaking as a counselor and not representing the council. None of us has any authority at all unless we can convince two others to go along with us. And I say that to people quite a lot, and I think it's important and valuable to put those kind of caveats in your conversation, because I think it helps people just understand how it works.
Yeah, and personally, as you are all probably aware, you all get approached quite a bit about different things, and I've been asking people to put it in writing and send it to my town.
Yeah,
Yeah, I just think it's easier to do it that way, just because, you know, quite frankly, I could lie about what someone says, but if they put it in writing, it's, you know, it's there for the Freedom of Information Act, and, you know, unfortunately, nobody ever takes you up on that offer. I have not gotten one email yet out of the 30 people that have stopped me recently, but I do encourage them to all send me an email, and I tell them what the email address is, because, you know, that's how I'd prefer to do it, but.
no, that's a good practice. Anything else on social media? 17 requests for staff for time and legal opinions. This came up, again, several years ago. This was the resolution here. I think this is the one that probably conflicts, if we have a conflict with the charter and sort of the division of responsibilities. This is where we might tiptoe over the line. The town manager, the assessor, and the auditors, and I think our legal firm are the only ones that we directly sort of oversee.
So the town council confirms the only position they oversee is the town
This
manager.
is the town manager.
And hold on, let me just find.
We hire the assessor and also one other position. But I guess the point that the most important part there isn't the number of people that we're directly responsible for. It's that the council does all its business with the staff through the town manager.
Yeah, so the charter says, under town council, Article 2, Section F, deal with the administrative service solely through the town manager, and neither the council nor any member thereof shall give orders to any subordinates of the town manager, either publicly or privately. And so I would suggest that this probably whole section be struck, the 602.17 as it's referenced in the charter, or we could re-put the charter language in the council rules.
I think that as we've done it for the previous reason of having it here being clear, I think putting that part of the charter in place of this text would be a good step myself.
So under section 02.17, we would reference the charter
Reference the
language.
charter language.
Okay.
I think that makes the most sense.
Yeah, because it really is a conflict of interest that,
Yes.
you know, especially section B, that we've got to go to him for approval to go to, and I just think that's a conflict of interest if
Well,
we
you
want
do have to do that.
You do have to do that.
No,
That's what the
no,
charter
no,
says.
I understand that, but he can decline whether we go to the attorney or not.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's a conflict of interest.
Well, yeah, I think that's, I think if that's an issue that actually comes up, then I think that's an issue that the council as a whole would have to take on. And
Yeah.
it would get resolved that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree that the town manager shouldn't be making that decision. It should be a council decision.
It should be a council decision, not
Yeah.
a town manager.
And if
decision.
any counselor doesn't get satisfaction for whatever reason for whatever issue, they can bring that to the council. And then if you get two other counselors to agree with you, then you can have that discussion and move forward. But we've never had that happen, but that's the way it would work, and I think referencing the charter language makes it less confusing.
Yeah,
I agree.
yeah.
Okay.
So
I
strike-
think
strike
I think
that.
at the end of the day, if I'm declining to do what the council's asked, I think it would be a personnel matter, and you'd have an executive session
Yeah.
to
Right.
discuss that with me, and I would either comply or you would have
You'd have the
different action.
Yeah. Yes, you'd have the opportunity to work it out. It doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily mean that it's,
But I think the point about this is, the town manager's charged with managing the budget of the town, and incurring legal expenses is a financial expense
Yes.
that only the town manager has the authority to do.
yeah.
Yeah.
So if the council requests me to get legal opinions or do legal work, I can't imagine I'm gonna deny that.
Well, and I think some of the confusion in the past is that, again, if you remember the way we budgeted, you had legal in lots of different places. You had legal in the council's budget. So that confuses that a little bit. If there's legal money in the council's budget, then why can't the council just go ahead and use that? So, but I think this will just clear it all out.
Yep.
And I think
That's it.
that's it. The next section is basically what's reserved and the severance clause, which, going forward, I think we probably need to think about standardizing our policies and our rules and our ordinances in general, just as far as what's in them. And I think things like severance clauses and some of the other preambles that you see in ordinances or stuff would be good things for us to adopt, but that's for another day. So that was pretty straightforward. Anything else before we move on from council rules? Not a lot of changes there. Council, the next agenda item is town council committees. We have about 25 minutes, 30 minutes to go. Packet page 14 shows the current list of the 2024-25 council liaisons. What we didn't have in our packet, and I thought I printed it out, yeah, I did, is the town council's committees, boards, and affiliations policy. In here, we have all of the charges for the different committees that we have these for from the websites. And I didn't have time to compare all of these with what we have actually in our committee policy. I would venture to guess that there's some discrepancies between the two.
I'll just say, I apologize, we didn't include that. I thought we were gonna have more of a general discussion about what you wanted to have for committees and things of that nature. I viewed this item as probably an item we were gonna maybe
We're not gonna
revisit.
finish tonight.
Yeah, we're not
Yeah,
gonna finish
no, we're not gonna wrap
tonight.
this
So we
up
can
tonight.
plan to include that in the future, and then if you guys, make a suggestion that we eliminate a committee or combine a committee or something, then we can come back with a proposed
Yeah.
structure.
Yeah, I think it's not a complaint, there's no apology needed. Like you said, I think this is a preliminary discussion more so than the previous one on the rules. I do think we want to take this document, though, and kind of compare it to what we have on the web and ultimately update everything so that we just have one document. Part of me feels like it would be easier to have this information in our committees, boards, and affiliation policy, and then on each committee page, just have a link to that policy. And that way, when something changes and needs to be updated, we can update the policy, and you don't have to go through and change the links for all the individual committee pages on the website. That would be one recommendation I'd make. There are some things about the way it's presented on the website that I like better than what's in our committee policy. Right now, for committees, we have the Brownfields Advisory Committee, which is really an ad hoc committee. We have the Community Economic Development Committee, which we've talked about. That's the one we've talked about retiring most recently.
Right, I mean, I think the members on page 17, the list of members is inaccurate at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, bottom of 16 and top of page 17.
The Community Television Advisory Committee is one, frankly, over the years, we've struggled mightily to find volunteers for. That's in the 7 years I've been on the council, that's kind of come together and fallen apart a couple of times. The Dry Middle Schoolhouse Committee has a pretty dedicated group of followers there, and that's been pretty steady, though. They have struggled too at times to find a quorum. Our Finance Committee for years just didn't exist, and that was reconstituted relatively early. I've been a member of the General Assistance and Fair Hearing Authority for 7 years, and we've not had a hearing once. This is state statute requirement that we have this in case there is a challenge to a decision. Library Board of Trustees is actually a town council committee, but operates very independently. The Ordinance Advisory Committee has morphed over the years, actually into the Ordinance Advisory Committee. It's been a couple of different things in the past. Open Space Committee we're more familiar with. The Recreation Committee still exists. Resiliency used to be the old Recycling Committee. And they've taken on a lot of new work this year, as we all know, what with the updating the ordinance in the lakes. Wild Blueberry Festival Committee.
Can I just back up it? I mean, on the resiliency, on packet page 34,
Yep,
it says, under membership, it says a staff member of the Recycling and Solid Waste Department shall be a non-voting ex officio member of the
Yep.
committee. And no one ever attends. I mean, they certainly would be welcome, but,
I think what I would say is when we, let's see if there's any here that people think should go away.
okay.
And if we can come to agreement with that, then we can just eliminate that for work we have to do and we'll retire that committee. And then I think the next step would be for everybody to dive into the detail and reconcile these two documents we've talked about. So, and get those edits in before our next workshop meeting about this subject. Does that seem like a good course of action? Does that work for you?
So just to confirm, we're gonna talk about like basically the committees we think we wanna eliminate now.
Right.
And then we'll work on reconciling the remaining.
The one,
committees.
yeah. And that way maybe we'll shorten the to-do list a little bit if we come to. I think there's general agreement on the Economic Community Development Committee, but I don't know that there is on any of the others. The last few are the Board of Assessment Review. Again, this is another committee that we're required to have. The Board of Health, the town manager I think oversees this one for us. The last town manager actually had a board comprised of 2 or 3 local medical people who advised him on, or were available to advise him. I don't know if you've had time to create anything like that yet. We have new services in town that didn't exist before. We have the urgent care down on Turnpike Acres, which didn't exist at this time, and they're a huge resource for our community now. The planning board is state statute, obviously would have. The zoning board of appeals, again, is also the same thing. These two committees are different from all the other committees in that they are quasi-judicial, just like ourselves. We are in a pickle again, unfortunately, with the planning board. Tamara is moving, and so we're going to lose her, which means we have just enough people on the planning board to have a meeting. If anyone's absent, we're out. That committee usually has ideally has 5 members and 2 alternates. And I don't think we've had that many members of the committee since I've been on the council. If the planning board falls apart, guess what, folks? We become the planning board. So if you know of anyone who has any experience, I think the planning board and the ZBA are really tough ones because they are pretty technical. We have the town planner who attends those meetings, or the code enforcement officer who attends the ZBA meetings. And so those people that serve on those committees have a lot of resources available to them through the town staff. But they still, whenever I talk to people, their eyes kind of glaze over when I start talking about asking them to consider the planning board or ZBA, so.
Nobody had that policy, because I didn't know we were gonna be reviewing it today.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah,
Apologize.
no need to apologize. It's a work in progress.
Yeah.
And so those are the committees that we currently have.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
One of the things I might suggest as a way to try to navigate the planning board and things of that nature, the more committees there are, the more we spread out the limited volunteers that we have.
Yes.
And so maybe if some committees might be consolidated, then there might be opportunities for people to either serve twice or to serve on a different committee to kind of consolidate some of those. So that, I think, is one of the things that the council could consider
Yeah,
as a
if-
way to get more involvement.
If you see any, that look like they would fit together, when I look at the list, there aren't any that jump out at me that way.
Well, what are the three mandatory again? It's zoning,
Zoning,
Planning.
planning, those are the
Okay.
only two that are.
I thought you said there was
Oh,
a
I'm
third.
sorry. There's the general assistance and fair hearing,
okay.
or fair hearing authority, and then there's also the Board of Assessment Review. Those four are required of us.
Okay, Board of Assessment,
And then on the previous page, yeah, fair hearing,
which one was that one? What number was that?
that one is F,
Okay, I got general assistance, fair hearing,
yep. And then the other ones are
F, M, and P.
M and O and P.
O and P, okay. So those are the ones we have to have.
Yep.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
The one that, just from my general observance, and seeing what other communities do that might be possible to combine is the recreation and open space, to call it the Recreation and Open Space Committee. You could combine some of those responsibilities, and the Recreation Committee, has a couple vacancies, and so does the Open Space Committee, so it might be an opportunity. And a lot of what they kind of do is goes hand in hand.
You won't be surprised to know that once upon a time, it was the Open Space and Recreation
Oh,
Committee,
okay.
and we split it apart because they felt that they had diverged and there wasn't much overlap. I think ultimately, our current Open Space Committee, in my mind, is almost an ad hoc committee. It was an attempt to focus a lot of attention on that and actually get us started and build a foundation for expanding that. Some of the work that they're doing, like now they're connected to the planning board, they're going to site walks, their expertise, the planning board's really happy about having on board. Talking to developers, I think doing a lot of education, trying to get people to not think that it means the town's gonna grab their land away from them. That's not the goal, but just to think to the future and plan. So I think ultimately, if we had a well-established trail system, and like some towns do, I think it would make sense for it to go together. I don't have any strong feelings one way or another. Ann, you probably would know better than any of us. I mean, you're,
Yeah, I mean, when I was served as liaison to the rec committee, it was under a previous director, but it seemed like the rec committee was really sort of struggling to figure out what the committee members were supposed to do. And when we created the open space committee, it was really focused on, it was very task-oriented, create an open space plan, which Gray hadn't previously had, and then also, work with the land trust to help, and with property owners to facilitate land acquisition. And so we obviously have completed the open space plan, and are have moved very slowly towards understanding more what the planning process is and the plan, and the site approval process is. And one thing that's changed since we created the open space committee was that the land trust, the community land trust, the conservation land trusts have become a little less active or involved in the town. There's been some leadership changes at each of them. And so we were originally thought that they would be taking the lead on land acquisition and that we would just simply be advising them. And now it seems like they're kind of like no-shows. And so the committee may need to take the lead on helping to sort of plan and envision trail corridor or trail networks and things like that. So that's kind of where we're working now. Could that be done under the auspices of a rec committee? Yes. I get nervous that the too broad a charge would just result in confusion and sort of disarray.
If
Well,
we did-
and would it make sense to have the rec committee and then the open space and even the Blueberry Festival under the rec committee? Because I think we're just adding too many titles here, right? So you have, you know, the rec committee, and then both of those fall underneath there, is what, you know, because while Blueberry takes off on their own thing, but, you know, it's really part of the rec committee, really, isn't it? Kind of a subset of that?
Or, I mean, it was originally part of DECD, I'm sorry, the Community Economic Development Committee, so, and you could argue, I think, convincingly that it belongs there. But the CEDC kind of became more moribund, and while Blueberry was very active, so I think it got split off. I mean, the question in my mind is what then, if we were to put open space and even the Blueberry Fest committee under rec committee, what does that look like? I'm a pragmatist, honestly. I mean, I try to visual. What does that really mean? I mean, like how would those committees, those subcommittees meet? Would they meet separately from the rec committee each month? I mean, are you then expecting, say, that the chairs of Open Space and Blueberry Fest to go to 2 meetings a month because they're going to chair their own meetings and they're going to attend the rec committee meetings? I mean, like those kinds of questions are what's opaque to me.
Yeah, I'm a member of the rec committee, or the liaison to the rec committee, pardon me. And, you know, that basically operates under the rec director, he's the sort of staff support for the committee. And there's, from my perspective, there's a lot of, there are several people really interested in recreational opportunities for kids and recreational opportunities for, adults that, operate under the rec department, sort of. And, to me, it would be radically changing the mission of the rec committee to put this role of the open space committee, to meld it with the open space committee, which has a different, has a different way of operating in terms of interaction with the planning board and review of developments. It's a different animal altogether, in my view. And again, so the Blueberry, and then the Blueberry Festival Committee, again, I've never been to one of their meetings, but I get the impression that there's a lot of really motivated people focused on one little thing. And I would hate to lose that.
Yeah.
And I don't mean it's a little thing, if I said little thing.
Yeah.
Lacey, would you like to?
Specific thing, yeah.
Can you come to the podium, please? Because no one will hear you from back there. Thank you. Someday we'll have the technology. It's not today.
Oh, you know what? I know. There's a microphone.
I don't know. Is there a microphone there?
Yeah.
So I won't talk about the festival because it is what it is. But my question is, if the concern is volunteerism, then what can the town do better, a better job at raising volunteers, recruiting volunteers? But in response to Recreation Committee itself, I would ask, what is the purpose of it? And is it relevant now with social media? I mean, Gray Rec can put on Facebook, what programs are we needed? And then you'll have the community say, we need more of this and that. And then it's more of like logistics. Can Anthony and the town afford this? And is there room for that versus a committee which is maybe struggling? So I wouldn't want to put anyone on the bus, but maybe look, if you're considering closing down CDC, maybe take a closer look at recreation, its purpose in the new era. So, and I would keep open space separate. I know that's very detailed, and I would keep the festival separate. That's my opinion.
Thank you.
Lacey Ettenson, Gray resident.
I think, this is really just a 50,000-foot sort of level conversation to sort of see what the best way forward is. There's always, we try to encourage volunteers in a number of different ways as we do now. The other thing is that, we have different ideas at different stages of development, if you will, and I think when you're creating something like with open space, we needed to make them their own thing in order to get that started. Ultimately, as ideas and committees develop over time and mature, if you will, they do morph into other things, and sometimes they go away, like, we're proposing to end the Economic Community Development Committee.
I guess I would just add that I've not like I've been attending the rec committee meetings regularly for more than a year, and I haven't got any indication that they're struggling at all. They seem like a really good committee to me.
Yeah, and I was thinking more or less, because they're such a good committee, if we're struggling with some of the other ones, would it make sense to add, either community economic development underneath them, add the, one of the other committees we just mentioned, the open space committee underneath them, because if we have them under there, then maybe we could draw some of those rec people to help with those committees, as a subset.
I think that's kind of what Michael's proposing too.
Yeah, I agree.
I think the sweet spot is hard to find, because you also run the risk of blowing up a committee, because they are often made up of individuals who are, interested in a specific thing. And when you go and you change the charge on them, some people will lose interest, and you can kind of diffuse that effort. So personally, I'm kind of hesitant to monkey with any of the committees that are currently working, because they're currently working. Even if they may be smaller groups, one of the things I think we can take a look at is the numbers of people that are on each committee, and see if perhaps that a smaller committee could still be effective. Over the last few years, the last councils have been trying to get the committees to focus on the comp plan, their role in helping us, they're committees that the town council created to magnify our own ability to do work. The OAC committee was created because the council spent all of its time trying to write ordinances and did absolutely nothing else. So they created OAC, and they would give OAC a charge and a direction and say, bring us back some language that meets this criteria. So they're a way for us to kind of magnify our ability to do work. We had 2 years ago now, I think it was, we had the sort of volunteer committee sort of leadership evening event. It was attended by most of the chairs of the then committees. And it was really well received, but we couldn't sustain that because other things kind of got in the way.
Right, and I do think we need to be careful about burning out folks by making them do too many things. I mean, I like both the Resiliency and the Open Space Committee participated in the Great Community Day and the Blueberry Fest this year, and I think last year. And those are 2 weekend days within a few months of each other, a couple months of each other, and then the Hazardous Waste Day is this Saturday, and in the past the recycling committee helped with that event, and we checked in with folks to see about their availability, but that would be a third weekend day that they would be expected to work on top of other stuff they do. So, I mean, I think that we have some really dedicated and skilled volunteers, and I think we're getting value from them, and they're working on stuff that the town needs. So I'm kind of with you, Dan. I hate to kind of monkey with that at this point, and I remain concerned that if we fold open space and the Blueberry Committee under the rec committee, then that would require the chairs at the very least, or a member, from each committee to attend 2 meetings in a month, because they'd have to attend their own committee meeting as well as rec committee to do a report.
Okay, Michael?
I was just going to point out the Recreation Committee, it has a reference, there was its establishment as part of the Gray Land Bank Ordinance
Yeah.
from 1988. And so essentially, the responsibilities of the committee are not compliant with the ordinance.
Correct.
Because the ordinance talks about them dealing with open space and things of that nature. So that's kind of why I made that suggestion as well, because the ordinance refers to a committee established for land conservation, recreational activities, and things of that nature as part of that ordinance the council adopted in 1988. And so essentially that's not happening, where the open space committee is doing the work of the recreation committee, which is what the reason it was established. And you said they were connected, so that's why they were connected, and
Right.
the ordinance were never adjusted to reflect
Right.
the disconnect.
And we need to correct that. We either need to change the
Yeah, I mean,
ordinance
that seems
or,
easy to correct.
or to do that. I think that, my sense is there's general agreement. I mean, with the changes in the structure of the town staff, the Community and Economic Development Committee, for all intents and purposes, has become a town function now. So, and I think that in that respect, I'm fine with retiring that particular committee. What I'd like to do is I'd like to think that if there are community members who are interested in working with that group, that they could still participate in that work, that there would be a mechanism for them, to do that.
I think in any case, I would always recommend a department head, if they had community members who were interested, to just form their own advisory committee. It doesn't have to be an official committee of the council.
No, but again, yes, and I don't have a problem with that, but the council's responsible for, through the manager and then through the staff, to get certain things like the comp plan implemented. And so I think we're struggling a little bit with our ability to weave the comp plan into the sort of day-to-day work of the town. I know that's important to you too, and it's one more thing that we're trying to do. The question is the mechanism. So for instance, if you look at the policy, the Community Economic Development Committee has a variety of members from, a variety of different groups. If you look at the Community Television Committee, that's made up out of 7 members. Well, we've never had 7 members on that particular group. If you look at the Dry Mill Schoolhouse, that's made of 5 members. The Finance Committee is made of 3 members. So these numbers to me feel either somewhat arbitrary or the reason for them is kind of lost to time. And I think that if 3 members makes a viable Finance Committee, why wouldn't 3 members make a viable Community Television Committee?
Yeah, just reduce their numbers, to
yes,
make it easier for them to function. I agree,
Right.
Yeah.
So, and then pairing them up with the appropriate staff member as,
Right.
and for instance, I don't know that Anthony would have time to attend the open space meeting and the rec meeting and.
Or have the expertise, in those issues.
True,
I
but.
mean, no slight on Anthony at
Yeah.
all, but, subdivision review and open space requirements is not something I would usually associate with a rector.
No, but the ultimate oversight for the ongoing care and feeding of trails and
Sure.
those things could easily be a function of the rec department. If that idea was that fully formed and developed, which it isn't. So having someone like Anthony attend open space meetings and help with that sort of foundational work could be valuable. Obviously, Michael has to decide if Anthony's got the time to do those things. But that might be one way to start too, is if the town resources that we apply to the council meetings, if maybe that was fewer people who attended more of those meetings, they may see opportunities for synergy too, and be able to help blend some of those groups together. So it might be we might have to back the bus up and start with some foundational work before we actually get to the point where we can merge those groups together. I don't know if that makes sense to people.
I'm also, I guess I would observe that when I started my participation with town government on the resiliency committee, and there was a time when it was really struggling for membership.
Yep.
And to make progress on things that it had started. And now it's really kind of resurgent, you know, and functioning well. So, I mean, I would have hated to see it be abolished because of a lull in its, you know. And I guess I am feeling the same way about the Community and Economic Development Committee, that, I mean, we're gonna hire an economic development director, or, you know, and that would, you know, like Anthony kind of uses the rec committee as a sounding board. And, you know, and those are, you know, it's a sounding board of people appointed by the council. And I think that's a good interaction for staff. And I would say the same would apply for economic development. And, you know, and with a focal staff person on that issue, perhaps that committee can become resurgent as well.
Yeah, or if there are people in that piece, they can be brought into the evolving structure of that group. Much like the finance committee is made up out of the finance director and the town manager. And it has a member of the council on it, but then it also has one or two members of the public on it too, so. We're almost out of time. I guess what I would say is the next step is to take a look at the two documents that we have, the information from the website, the information from our own committees, boards, and affiliation policy. Go through there and look for, look for duplication. Let's eliminate that. Go through there with an eye towards, you know, have we made it more complex than it needs to be? Are we looking for more members than it's really realistic to expect we'll get? And, you know, you and staff can noodle it too, and we'll, at some point in time, schedule another workshop date to bring it all back together and see if we can't, you know, coalesce around some changes.
If you'd like to, right now, we have, it's the time before our September 17th meeting that we could basically reconvene this conversation on September 17th, and everybody could come here with some recommendations
Yep.
about some changes that may be made, or.
Do the rest of you feel that the 17th gives you enough time to compare those documents and prepare something for that meeting?
If not, we can certainly do it later in the year.
Ann, do you?
Yeah, the first half of September is pretty busy for me, but I'll be out of town some, but I could.
It's not quite a month. but-
Yeah, I think I could get it done.
Michael, that work for you?
Yeah, I'm probably gonna have some questions for Mike about, or you, Dan,
Yep.
as to what these committees actually do.
Yep.
Um,
I think when you have a chance to look at the policy, you'll have a much better
okay, yeah,
understanding, but feel free to call me anytime.
okay.
But maybe we don't need to set a date that we can,
Yeah, we can do that.
down the road.
Even at the first meeting in September, we can decide if we want to use that slot for this work.
I mean, I think resiliency isn't gonna meet this month, and I don't think open space will as well, either. Resiliency may meet, but I think, I mean, to the extent that the council liaisons could just reach out to their committees and
Yep.
query them on, you know, things like committee size and charge and
Yep.
any changes they see as being useful, that would be helpful too.
Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about it on the first meeting in September, just to check in and see if the 17th works.
That works.
I'm going to consider us done, and we've got a few minutes before our 7 o'clock start time for the business meeting. Any objections?
Nope,
Nope.
sounds good, thanks.
Yep.